The following is a conversation with John Kelly. John is an endurance athlete and an ultramarathoner that has completed some of the world's toughest races. I discovered John when I started following the Barkley Marathons. The Barkley is known to be the world's hardest endurance race on the planet, having only 17 finishers since its inception in 1986. John is a two-time finisher and only one of three people to have finished this race more than once. He is a husband and a father of four residing in Boone, North Carolina. His physical and mental toughness is one very few people harness, which is why I am excited to be talking with John today. You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. If you are enjoying this content, please support our sponsors in the description. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Folks, listen up. I want to take a brief moment and thank our podcast show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Native Path Supplements, and Redmond Life. Lombardi Chiropractic has been my personal chiropractor for 10 years and has kept my body strong and healthy. Native Path Supplements are used by numerous co-movement clients and our coaching team here at the facility. I highly recommend that you try their chocolate collagen peptides. I was made aware of Redmond Life by one of our trainers here at the facility. He recommended I try Relight electrolyte powder. This supplement has dramatically improved my afternoon energy levels and overall hydration. I'd like to thank these three companies for providing outstanding service and products that make our society healthier and more resilient. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's C-O-M-O 15, at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com or redmond.life and receive 15% off all your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. Okay, John, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking the time today to hop on. Like I was talking before the call here, we're a big fan of ultra running, the endurance sports world, adventure racing, the Barkley Marathons. And you seem to be a guy that keeps popping up, and I've been following your stuff for a little while. So here we are talking. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Looking forward to it.
So question, this is just a random question, but I'm curious. The Barkley Marathons just finished. Are you recovered yet from that race?
Pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not back up to full training volume and intensity, but the big part is getting over the kind of mental exhaustion, the sleep deprivation and the brain fog. So I'm pretty good on that front.
So what does that look like from a recovery standpoint? I'm curious because I've trained a few clients here through the years with Ironman distance, and the recovery is, pretty lengthy for them, and obviously it's dependent on the person. But the Barclays goes to like a whole nother level, right? You're moving for approximately 60 hours, you're sleep deprived, the whole deal. Your hormones obviously get jacked up. Like, what does your recovery afterwards look like?
Yeah, so it has gotten less bad, I'll say, the more I've done these things, particularly on the physical side. I mean, after doing Barkley, my legs are a little bit sore, but I can still, function pretty well for normal activities physically, as opposed to the first marathon that I did, where I could barely walk for a week afterwards. The the other parts of it have gotten a bit better as well, but those are the things that, you've just got to sleep, you've got to get some calories down, you've got to rest. It helped that this year the race was Tuesday to Thursday instead of it used to be Saturday to Monday, so I had a weekend to try to catch up on things a bit, but it's generally people expect that you'll do something like that and then you'll just go pass out and sleep for 14 hours, and it just doesn't doesn't work like that. Your body's sore and aching, and it's still all keyed up from the race. So it's generally a few nights, 2 or 3 nights, before I can really have a good, solid night's sleep, and then a week or so to get over having those random moments where I'm just like, man, I've got to lay down and take a nap. Like there's no choice in the matter right now.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine, what's it take for time frame as far as ramping your volume back up? And do you take like a deload week or a total week off or two? What's your training look like, phasing out of that post-race period?
Usually I'll have about a week of rest, 6 or 7 days. I think it was 6 days this time. Um, and then gradually start ramping back up from there. So I guess we're 3 weeks after the race now, pretty much
Hmm.
to the day. And so I'm approaching some normal volume, still not quite back up there, but probably in another week or so, my training will start to get back to normal.
Hmm. Hmm. Awesome. What's normal look like for you? We've been in the coaching space here mainly from a strength perspective. We do obviously some very basic conditioning with clients and whatnot, but I'm interested, what does your average week of training look like? Whether it's mileage, volume, elevation. I know it varies depending on the year and what you're prepping for and whatnot, but can you just give listeners an idea of what that looks like?
It's not as much as what I think people expect it to be, given the sorts of things I do. I have the same constraints as most other people do between my a family and a career, and I generally plateau at upper 60s or around 70 miles a week.
Hmm.
There might be 1 or 2 weeks per year where I surge up into the 90 to 100 mile range. But I'm not getting out there and doing 120, 130 plus miles a week, and without the biking and swimming, it's certainly less time than I
Hmm.
used to put in when I was doing Ironmans. And so, um, that'll generally be a long run, and 1 or 2 workout days per week. The rest fairly easy, and just fitting that around family life and my job as best I can, where I'm fortunate to at least have a flexible schedule on that and be working from home now.
Hmm. So how many hours a week when you're doing the 60 hour or 60 miles ish, 60 to 90, what's the time frame on that you allocate towards training?
Um, that can depend a bit on what sort of train I'm doing,
Hmm.
and so I would say 10 to 12 would be a
Hmm.
normal week. Maybe again, occasionally surging up to 15 or so.
Hmm.
But at this point in time, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to do any sort of cross training or strength training with that. And not that I um, don't think that's valuable and useful, and some of it I would enjoy doing. I would love to get out on my bike some more. I've got the Blue Ridge Parkway right here. It'd be some
Yep.
beautiful rides,
Yep.
but it's just with the time constraints I have, it's not as valuable as the actual core running training that I need to do.
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna ask that from a strength training perspective and like a mixed modal type piece there, like you mentioned biking and swimming and stuff. So that you're not spending currently any time on those modalities.
Uh, Not anything significant. I mean, my coach has kind of a quick mountain legs routine that is just
Hmm.
some lunges and stair steps and a few other quick strength routines that might take a few minutes. I can
Hmm.
do during a work call or something else. But
Hmm.
outside of that, no real dedicated chunks of time to it.
Wow. And so for listeners, I just want to clarify. So you're working a full-time job, and I think you have, was it 4 kids?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you've got a lot on your plate.
I'm the tech co-founder of a startup, and so that has been quite demanding over the past 5 years. We're fortunately to a point now where the company's large enough that it's not quite as rough. But again, the fortunate thing about that is while it's a demanding schedule, it's a fairly flexible schedule. So I can, fit in my run at some odd hour of the day and then work at some even
Yep.
more odd hour of the day.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were a co-founder for a tech company. If we have time towards the end, maybe we'll circle back to that. Just being a business owner also, I'll be curious to see what you're up to with that. So you said you have a background in Ironman races. I didn't know that. So tell me a little bit about that.
It was something else that I wanted to explore and challenge myself with back when I really about the same time I got started with ultras. I was living outside of Washington, D.C., where it is uh, hot and humid and miserable during the summer and not exactly my favorite conditions for running. So I said, well, I'll start biking in the summer, and I had just beautiful, perfect rural farmland in Western
Hmm.
Maryland to ride through. I've still never really been anywhere that's as nice as what that was for biking. Um, and I thought, well, I just need to add in swimming. How bad can that be? The answer was pretty bad. I was not good at swimming. I did not enjoy swimming. I tried to get good at swimming, and was rather unsuccessful. But it was a fun experience. Again, a fun challenge. I met some incredible people. Got to do some big races right at the end when I knew I was going to be going full time in ultra running, which um, I just felt my journey had run its course in triathlon. I had met most of my goals and uh, discovered that I mean just trail running is what I'm personally more passionate about. What fits me a bit better. It doesn't involve swimming, and so I took my pro card for just one race, just to experience it, and that was good fun, and that was November 2018 at Ironman
Hmm.
Arizona, and so moved on to full time ultras after that. Also was the same time that I left DC and escaped the miserable summers, so I could run year round more comfortably.
Yeah, because you're in Boone, right? North Carolina now?
Yeah, up in
Hmm.
the mountains, right
Hmm.
on the Tennessee border. And before this, I was living over in the UK for nearly 4 years.
Yeah, yeah, I read that on your bio. We drove through the Blue Ridge Parkway a few years ago. We drove a good portion of it. We did some hiking and stuff up there, my family, and that's just some beautiful, beautiful territory. And I'm assuming you're doing a lot of your runs and training through those mountains.
Yeah, there are some fantastic trails around here, and it's been a lot of fun exploring them so far. My chief complaint, as someone who likes to run unreasonably long distances, and after my time in the UK, where they have this just incredible network of public footpaths and rights of way crisscrossing the entire country. It's a bit frustrating to, have all of these amazing trail systems, but it's impossible to link them up without, you're running a mile or two on a highway with no shoulder and people going 70 miles an hour.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be frustrating. Yeah, no, it's hard to plan around that, right? But thankfully, between the phone and GPS and all of that, you can navigate pretty well, probably. How many Ironman did you complete? Races, the full distance.
Uh, I'd have to go look and tally them up to be sure. I believe it was 8, around,
Okay.
plus or minus 1 on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. What was the struggle with swimming for you? You said it was tough for you.
Yeah, I never I I think that there are some things that physiologically my body isn't well suited for swimming,
Hmm.
and um, other things just I never could quite nail the form. And with biking and running, I know that if I do the same thing and do it faster and harder, I'm gonna go faster.
Yep.
Swimming's not like that. The harder I push, the harder the water pushes back. And so I couldn't quite get it.
Yep.
And it's, if you have to choose to be bad at one of the three,
Yep.
especially at the Ironman distance and those ratios, swimming is definitely the best to be bad at. And so it was kind of nice sometimes, be coming out of the water near the very back, and I'd just spend the rest of the race passing people.
Hmm.
But if you want to compete at the very top, you have to be good at all three. And
Hmm.
swimming is definitely the hardest to get good at if you
Hmm.
didn't grow up doing it.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because I started swimming open water, 1 mile distances 2 years ago, and 3 years ago I hired a swim coach, and I took lessons, and it was amazing. I went from the typical super non-efficient slow swimmer with my head above the water to reasonably decent at swimming. Not high level, not elite, but could swim, a 45-minute 1 mile open water swim, all with some lessons. Did you have a swim coach or anyone helping you?
I did a little bit with a swim coach, and I went to master's classes for a full, I guess, two years. That kind of
Okay.
basically the second half of my triathlon career, and that I could have. I wish I could have spent more time one-on-one with a coach.
Hmm.
I was also on a triathlon team that had a training camp each year and a coach there. So I definitely got better. But again, when I like lining up in that pro start wave at my last race, I was left by myself in the dust within the first 100 meters. And so no one to draft off of, no one to help with sighting. Came out of the water. The pro athlete coordinator was visibly concerned. Like, are you okay? Did something happen? It ended up, though, this is one of my favorite achievements. I assume I still have this, but it was by a solid 3 minutes at the time, the slowest swim ever in a sub 9 hour Ironman. Uh, so,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know,
So say that
it was
again for listeners so they can absorb that. Say that one more time, John.
the slowest swim ever in a sub 9 hour Ironman.
Man,
So
that's wild. Not only is the sub 9 hour insanely fast, in my opinion, but you had the slowest swim to pair that. So that gives people an idea of how fast your bike and run were.
Well, yeah, I mean, to an extent. I mean, there are definitely a lot of triathletes out there that if they wanted to just sandbag on the swim, I'm sure that they could
Sure.
swim really slow and still make it under 9. But I mean, again, that's the thing. Like, they're those triathletes, they're at the top because they're good at all three. And when I come out of the water, and there are there are guys that are almost doing half of my time that I came out of the water in. And that sounds awful, but then you think of what that would look like on the bike or the
Hmm.
run. Like if I were doing twice someone's time on the bike, there's no way I could recover from that.
Sure, sure. Wow. Yeah, impressive either way, man. Wow. So, let's talk about quick what the Barkley Marathons is from a race perspective. Just can you give listeners a 101 version of what that race is?
Yeah, so it's through the mountains of Frozen Head State Park in East Tennessee, which is it's right next to where I grew up. Mostly off trail, unmarked course. You just get the day before the race. The course is drawn on a map for you, and you get a pretty good set of detailed instructions or directions for the course, just written directions. No GPS or electronic devices other than the cheap $10 watch the race director gives you. So navigation is map and compass, and for me mostly the terrain features, because it's not an orienteering race. You're following the natural lay of the land, and
Hmm.
as long as you stay on those terrain features and don't get off course, it's pretty intuitive. It is it's called a 100 miler. In reality, it's probably about 130. Um, Elevation gain the past few years has ranged, depending, the course changes a bit each year. So that has ranged between about 65 and 70,000 feet. It's that you don't know the start time until an hour before it starts. Weather conditions in East Tennessee that time of year can range from bitter cold and snow to steamy and warm, to wind and wet, dense fog where you can't see your hand in front of your face, or you could have all of those
Hmm.
in the same day. So very, very difficult to adapt and deal with all of those. The terrain is rocky and steep and covered in briars and mountain laurel and other growth. Um, so all of this adds up to kind of, in the race has been around since 1986. It's limited to 40 people each year due to limit impact to ecologically sensitive areas that the course passes through. And so now, after this year, 17 people have finished, which is around a 1% finish rate. I guess probably 1,500 or so people if you do 40 times, however many years that is, 30, 35, 36.
Hmm. Geez. So what percentage of that race is off trail? Almost all of it, right?
Yeah, pretty much all of it. Um,
Uh-huh.
there are a few miles at the end of the loop, uh, couple 2-3 miles in sort of the middle of the loop, and again the loop is probably about 24, 25 miles.
Hmm.
So that's maybe 10 to 15% is on
Hmm.
trail.
Hmm. Now, I'm really curious. I do a lot of hiking with my family. I do some solo hiking. Some of it's off trail, some of it's on trail. How hard is the orienteering part of this race? Now, you said it's you made it sound like it wasn't too difficult, but all the stuff that I've followed with the Barclays, so many people get lost off course, they miss a book. Um, how difficult is it? Like if you can read a topographical map, is it fairly easy or is it beyond that?
You have to have basic navigation skills. Again, it's not what I would call orienteering. I associate with instructions like take a bearing of 52 degrees, walk 400 yards in that direction,
Yep.
no matter what the terrain is in front of you, and there you'll find your cache or your next uh,
Hmm.
instruction or whatever. This is Again, it's drawn on the map, and being able to take a bearing and ensure you're going in the general right direction is important, especially at night or in dense fog. But you're going down a spur, you're hitting a creek, you're following the creek over to the next ridge line, and then you're running up that. So following the terrain features is the main thing. That's mainly how I navigate. The difficulty is the intense mental focus that it requires the entire time in order to not slip and accidentally wander off a little bit to one side or the other. And once you do that, then you're no longer following the terrain. You have to go against the terrain to get back onto the course, and everything looks the same. It's dense forests, trees, rocks, hills, everything everywhere the same. There are no, reference points that you can see in the distance to get a feel for where you are. It's very difficult if you get off course to be able to effectively locate yourself on a map in order to get back on course, especially if you haven't done your homework and really studying that map and understanding the lay of the land.
How long before the race do you get that map? Is it the same day, that like 24
It's
hours, or
it's the day before.
the day before? Yeah, so you've got to really hammer down on that to prep for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, so is this mostly power hiking for you? Like, what percentage of it is hiking slash walking compared to jogging slash running?
I mean, you've got to be able to move. You've got to be able to run every opportunity that you get to run. And that's another misperception that people have. If you can just keep moving and be persistent about it, then you'll get it done. And you've got to be able to move fast when the opportunity arises, and you've got to have a top end that's high enough to where when you are going up those 30, 40%, or in some cases steeper grades. I mean, some of them there's a cable line on the ground, and you've got to
Wow.
pull yourself up. You've got to be able to do that without hitting your red line, because you can't do that for 60 hours. So I would say the course is maybe again time wise 10% kind of flat and runnable, and then 45% uphill and 45% downhill, and so the downhill and the flat portions you've got to be able to run and move. You're power hiking on the uphills, which again are going to take more time than running downhill. So distance-wise, I would say you're running about half the time, but time-wise, you're probably running a third of the time, just because those steep uphills take so much longer.
Sure. So on the course there's little to no aid stations, right? From what I've seen, they leave some water jugs for you guys and whatnot, but is that true?
Yeah, there are 2 water drops on the loop, if the water's not frozen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so it's 5 loops, and you're free to get whatever aid you want from your crew back at camp in between loops. And then once you set off for each loop, which the first loop early in the race, if conditions are good, it might be 8 hours. When you get to loop 4, the first year I finished loop 4, it's always the toughest one. You're sleep deprived and exhausted. It's usually nighttime. That I think the first year I finished took me 14 hours or more. So during that time, you're on your own with need to be carrying everything you need for food or to battle the elements. The only thing you can pick up on the way is water.
So along your 59 hour and some odd minute race there, how many minutes or hours are you sleeping, if at all?
I think I got about 20 minutes or so this year. Those
Wow.
were dirt naps on the fifth and final loop. I got about a 5 minute nap and then a 15-minute nap.
Did you set an alarm to make sure you got up?
Well, that cheap $10 watch that
Uh-huh.
I got this year, the alarm on it didn't work. It just
Oh.
and I actually lost some time. I wandered a bit off course when I was focused on that watch, trying to figure out how to get the alarm to work. And I don't know if the speaker was broken or what, but it wouldn't make any noise. It would just, the alarm would go off and the screen would flash, but it wouldn't do anything to actually wake you up.
Mhm.
And so I was lying down and cold streams and doing everything else I could to where the goal was to have to be able to lie down for 15 to 20 minutes, and at some point my body would hit an equilibrium where it got more uncomfortable than it was sleepy, and essentially say, okay, let's get up and get moving before we get too cold.
So, yeah, wow. Let's dive into that for a second. So, you were laying down in cold streams to rest slash sleep with the hopes that I'm assuming being so uncomfortable that the body would just naturally wake you up and then you'd start hiking and running again.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. That's fascinating. I mean, and at this point, this is lap 5, so you haven't slept in approximately 50 hours, right?
Yep.
Yeah, boy, John, that is insane. Did you have a running partner for the first 4 laps or no? Or 3 or 2?
Yeah, so I was with the first two, Albert Herrero Casas, Christophe Nanorg, and Damien Hall. Damien's one of my good friends and rivals from my time in the UK. And so Christophe dropped back after 2 loops. And then Damien and I were alone a bit for loop 4, but mostly it was Damien and Albert and I for most of the first 4 loops. And then about 2/3 of the way through loop 4, going up a big climb, I looked back and suddenly I was alone. They had dropped back a bit, and so continued on from that point. And for the 5th loop, you have to the race director sends you off in alternating directions to
Mm-hmm.
force you to be alone anyway. So I was with other people for most of the allowable time for that, and it's just a huge risk mitigation strategy, really, because you're going to make careless mistakes. You're again going to momentarily lose focus and just wander a few degrees in the wrong direction and end up in a bad spot. So the chances that you all make the same careless mistake at the same time is much lower. And
Mm-hmm.
so, there are a lot of opportunities for correcting and covering one another's mistakes.
Mm-hmm. What was the first year you did the Barclays? What was the most surprising element to that experience?
I mean, I had no idea what I was doing that first year, and so there were a lot of surprises. I mean, what ended up getting me was that I really had no experience with nutrition at those distances, and so I thought I was gonna, go out there and live off of gels and energy bars. Think, well, this is super calorie dense. It'll be the best thing to carry. And after 30 plus hours of essentially having nothing but sugar and engineered fuels, my stomach just said, nope, I'm done. Like no more. I absolutely could not get anything else down the tank.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't finish the first attempt?
No, I finished 3 loops, the
Three,
first, and 4 loops the second.
and
And
it was a fueling concern. It was a fueling issue then.
I mean, that was what stopped me.
Yep.
Had I had my fueling correct, I still don't know that I probably wouldn't have finished that year. Again, I was very early on and inexperienced. I don't know if I was fit enough to do it that year or not. I don't know if I could have finished up the navigation myself quick enough on the last 2 loops. I mean, it's one of those things where you finish 3 loops and you think, oh, I was so close, I was almost there, and no, like the fourth loop is always the toughest, and then the fifth loop is just it's a whole nother world when you hit that level of exhaustion and sleep deprivation.
What's your fueling look like now that you're experienced with it? What are you living off of for calories?
So I've my fueling has evolved quite a bit over the years. Part of that is learning. Part of that is my own body uh, changing. You know, things that once worked for my stomach no longer work, and vice versa. Um, and so at this point, uh, around 50% of my calories probably was from tailwind. Pretty much every single um, flask of fluid I had was tailwind. I mean, we're talking
Okay.
30 plus packets and bottles of tailwind.
Yep.
And that's been huge for me to not only get the calories down. You know, I find that I can keep getting that down as
Mhm.
opposed to my stomach kind of uh, getting full and knotted up if I try to take down too much solid foods. But also, it's one less thing for me to worry about in terms of managing electrolytes. Again, like your mental bandwidth is so restricted towards the end of something like that. Just having one less thing to think about and try to keep track of can be huge. Uh, Outside of that, I've just found the past few months discovered Martin gels, and I
Mhm.
still don't know if it's Martin or Morton or Mawerton or however you say it.
Sure.
They work quite well for me, especially the fact that they have ones that are legitimately caffeinated. None
Mhm.
of this like 25 milligram stuff. And I'm like, what is that going to do? Like, seriously, what
Sure.
is 25 milligrams going to do for me? They've got the 100 milligram gels, and late in the race, that's what I switched to try to keep me awake. And then Supernatural Fuel, something they're a startup in the UK, discovered while I was there, which I lovingly refer to as adult baby food. It's one of just you know, the nice fruit purees that are easy on your stomach, that go down easy, don't require a lot of fluid with them. Um, and then, you know, the remaining 20-25% is just snack food, whatever my body specifically gets a craving for, whether it's salty or sweet or savory. A lot of Little Debbie cakes, salt and vinegar chips, which a few years ago I hated the things. But then I discovered them during one of these long events, and they just they like I tend to get a bit of cotton mouth, and my taste buds just kind of stop working, and then nothing is palatable to me beyond that point, and something really strong like salt and vinegar chips, it just, you know, kicks them back into action, wakes them up. So that's been one of those things I've discovered that I thought I hated, but actually works really well for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and your body changes, right? The environment changes, all of that. For water, are you drinking out of the streams there?
Uh, the first the first 4 loops, it was pretty cold, and we were moving fast enough that the water drops were sufficient for me.
Mhm.
The fifth loop, it warmed up a good bit, and so I did, I think, twice fill up out of streams. and
Hmm.
that I have one of those Katahdin Be-Free filter bottles, which
Yep.
for the things I do, those have been absolutely life-changing. To not have to worry about, iodine tablets or Aquamira or pumps or whatever. Just a nice inline filter in the nozzle of the bottle with a flow rate that honestly you don't even notice the filters in there. You can just drink straight from it.
So is this the one I'm thinking of? It's the straw is the filter? Is that no?
No, the
Okay.
filter's built into um, the nozzle, and so it's got the flask, and then the cap screws on, which has the nozzle, and then the filter drops down into the flask on the other side of the cap, and so
Hmm.
that cap is the filter, and it's a hydropack threading, so you can actually take that off, and you can put it on your most hydropack has a very very large percentage of the market, whether it's Ultimate Direction flasks or Solomon flasks or other branded flasks. They're probably made by Hydropack, and
Hmm.
that threading is probably going to fit if you want to take that cap off and put it on whatever flask fits your specific pack.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a cool product. Yeah, I have like a water bottle. It's almost like a French press where you press it down and that filters and the part that you're pressing down and then what's left on the other side is drinkable water. But that's like bulky and it's heavy. It's definitely not,
Yeah,
for
and
what
and
you're
you
doing.
have to stop to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
I I could almost do this on the run, just run through a creek and reach down and scoop as I run through and stick the cap on and keep going. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not quite that quick with it, but in theory that would be possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm fascinated and I've read up a decent amount about the co-founder of this race, Gary Cantrell, Lazarus Lake, right, is the nickname. How would you describe Gary?
Uh, Eccentric and quirky with a very rough exterior, but a kind, uh, caring and thoughtful interior. He projects this image, and I think partially intentionally, partially just it's who he is, and he has no qualms about being who he is all the time to whomever. But he very much cares for the people out there. He's very passionate about giving them something that is a true challenge for them to overcome, and wanting people to be able to discover their limits. And so people like to portray him as this sadistic character coming up with this horribly insane tough race, but it's that's definitely not accurate in terms of his
Hmm.
actual motivations and what he wants to see out there.
Yeah, it's interesting because the interviews you see with him from like reporters and the normal media, they always think that about him, that he's like this madman. And I've never thought that. Like, I just what you said is how I would describe him just based on, videos and whatnot. Obviously, I've never met him, but he's created a race that's lasted what, 40 years, right? Almost 40 years. And it's designed to push the limits of the fittest humans on the planet with less than 1% success rate, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely, and he has a number of other interesting races out there as well that are quite creative and give people an opportunity that you don't find at your typical racing experience. But
Hmm.
it's like most things. It drives clicks and gets views if something is sensationalized and made to look like that. So Barkley is tough, no doubt. It's Um, but a lot of the things that gets portrayed in popular media, I think, is taken a bit out of context or exaggerated. I mean, what my favorite example is the Briars. Like, everyone loves to
Mhm.
take pictures of the scratched up, torn up
Yeah.
legs and
Yeah.
put the
Yep.
the Instagram filter on it to where
Yep.
it really accentuates those scratches. And yeah, I mean, they hurt, they're annoying, but like, no one's ever DNF'd a race because of a Briar scratch.
Sure.
And that's, people ask, well, like, why don't you wear pants or some sort of guard on your leg? Or, the simple answer is those pants would get ripped to shreds. The more accurate answer, though, is, again, I'm not going to DNF because I got a briar scratch that's going to fully heal within a week. I'm going to DNF because of heat exhaustion if I put on too much clothing to try to protect against them.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the write-ups and videos are done by people that are so far removed from the sport itself that it's hard to really correlate reality for people in that sport. I was reading that the media that is allowed to show up, a percentage of them or the large majority of them will drive like 30, 40 miles to the nearest hotel, like to like warm up and get comfortable, like before and during the race. Have you read that, John?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would think and hope that most of them are sticking around camp during the race, but in the tougher conditions where they're not going to be able to get much footage anyway, then yeah, I don't know. Maybe you do have to go to down the road to Oak Ridge, about half an hour away, to get any sort of wide array of hotel or restaurant offerings. But no, I mean, most of them that are there are great, and Laz has done a great job of striking that balance between providing visibility into the race and kind of the why of people, why people are out there, and telling people stories and showing the value of events like this and of wild places in general, without letting it become a circus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a small campground. The facilities are limited. And so the people that can come cover it are limited.
Mm-hmm.
And so Laz does try to make sure that those are people who will respect the event and do a good job telling those stories.
Yeah, I think that part of what makes the Barkleys so fascinating from an event standpoint is that it's not highly publicized, right? And there's a lot of secret to it, which I think is amazing. Everything from how do you even apply to get in, to getting in, to during the race, and what's you know not allowed on the course and whatnot. There's just a lot of secretive parts to this, but I think that needs to be preserved. I think that's amazing.
Well, and most of that is, because it has to be that way. Again, it's
Mm-hmm.
the campground facilities are already at capacity with just each runner and one crew person, a few limited race staff, and a few media.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the date of the race and all of that is known, people can show up. They can overwhelm those facilities, and then again, much of the race goes through off-trail sensitive ecological areas, and the
Mm-hmm.
race around 20 years ago was nearly shut down. The head ranger at the park, who was a bit of a curmudgeon, to be honest, and he's gone now. Fortunately, the current rangers are all awesome, incredible people. But that former ranger essentially shut the race down, and it took an act by the Tennessee legislature to get it back up and running, and that was with the understanding that the impact to those ecological areas would be limited, the number of runners would be capped, and every effort would be made to ensure that the race wasn't enticing other people to visit or to spectate and go off
Mhm.
trail into those areas. It's, this race um, is the only time that access into those areas is permitted.
Now, what happened? Was it this year? The book. There was a book, like, for listeners. You guys have to tear out a page from, is it what, 13 books, John?
Yeah, this year was 13 books, so they
Yeah.
basically serve as checkpoints
Yeah.
along the course to prove
What
that you've run the course.
what happened? Was it something that happened this year? Like a day hiker came through and took a book? Is that true?
Yeah, it was towards the very end of the race, and there was only one of those 13 books that was along an actual trail, and
Mm-hmm.
so and it was in a remote corner. I mean, literally the corner
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
park.
Mm-hmm.
And a day hiker came through, saw the book there, thought that the race was already over, and
Oh,
so
okay.
thought
Okay.
they were doing a favor
Sure.
by getting the book and bringing it back to camp. And Aurelian was on his last loop and yet to arrive at that book. And
Yep.
so he got to that spot and it was missing, and he spent time looking for it everywhere. And yeah, that would have been a tough moment, but fortunately he moved on after 5 to 10 minutes of convincing himself that the book was not there, and showed up back at the gate to finish the race, and there was Laz holding the book for him to rip out his last page.
Man, and he brought back, was it rocks or something, like as proof to make
No,
sure that.
that was a different one. So Damien, who had set off much later, arrived at the first book on the loop and was he was convinced that the book was gone. In reality, he was just sleep deprived and not focusing, and not he was a bit off on his navigation, and so the
Mm.
book was still there, but he didn't find it. And in his exhausted, sleep deprived, delirious state, he thought of the brilliant idea of just, well, I'll take this rock and I'll take this leaf, and that will prove that I was here, that
Ah,
I actually got to the right spot.
so, but that did it count? Because he didn't get the book.
Well, he was done at that point anyway. He
Oh,
he turned,
he was done.
yeah, he turned and went back to camp. He didn't make it any farther than that.
Gotcha, gotcha. The other races that Gary's working on or has created, two of them I'm interested in. The Barkley Classic, it's a 50K. Um, that's I'm curious, like, what kind of endurance background do you have to finish a race like that? What would you say?
So I mean, Barkley is the Barkley Fall Classic is one of the toughest 50Ks out there. I mean,
Okay.
but it is a 50K. So
Yep.
I would say that anyone who is a strong marathon runner or a strong long distance triathlete,
Yep.
give it a shot.
Hmm.
See
Hmm.
how you like it. See how you enjoy it. Maybe take a stepping stone of an easier 50K first if you want.
Yep.
But if you want to jump in the deep end, I think there's nothing wrong with going for that and
Hmm.
seeing how it goes for you. And it's going to be a lot more elevation gain than you're used to is the big thing. It's all on trail, and navigation shouldn't be an issue. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
none of those usual aspects of Barkley itself. It's meant to be kind of a teaser to
Yep.
give people a little taste of Barkley, and
Hmm.
especially for all the people that think they want to do Barkley, come do Barkley Fall Classic, and a lot of them decide that that's enough. They don't
Yeah.
want to do the one in the spring. But if you go do Barkley Fall Classic and you win, you get automatic entry
Hmm.
into the big Barkley, as they call it.
What's the time limit on the 50K? Is there one? I'm assuming.
I believe, don't quote me for sure on this, but I believe it's 13 hours and 20 minutes,
Okay.
which is the
Okay.
same because that's the same amount of time
Yep.
as the time limit for one loop on the actual Barkley.
What's the elevation gain?
That I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't want to give you a number on that
Okay.
for fear I'd be pretty far off. But
Okay.
I'm sure those stats are out there. I haven't run Barkley Fall Classic myself. I've been there to help out, but haven't taken that on. And part of that, again, people are out there racing for an automatic entry
Yep.
into Barkley. If I went out there and won, I'm assuming Laz would hand that down to the second place person, but I don't want to be a
Hmm.
distraction out there when I already have. If you finish Barkley, you get automatic entry whenever you want it in future years. So I don't
Hmm.
want to try to take something that I already
Hmm.
have.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, that's awesome. No, there's a new race coming up. I think maybe in August, Gary created or co-created a 370-mile race. Is that right?
Yeah, so he's done a couple of long road races. There's the last annual of All State, which is 500K across middle and west Tennessee. So flat, hot roads in the Tennessee summer. And then there's the Heart of the South. And I believe this new one is the third Circle of Hell, I believe. And you qualify for it by finishing the other two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely interesting. The flat, hot road races aren't really my thing.
Yep.
So nothing that I've done to this point.
So what are the first two races? I didn't know. You said this is the 370-mile new race in August is a third. You said third Circle of Hell. Is that what you said?
I believe that's what it's called. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too abreast of the kind of these types of races myself. Ones like this and Badwater and the like just don't personally appeal to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's last annual of All State was his original one, and
Mm-hmm.
then there is the the Heart of the South
What are
race
the
as well.
distances on the first? What's the first distance and the second distance? What were those?
So the last annual Vol State is 500K. Heart of the South, which is the acronym is HOTS, it looks like 351 miles. So a bit farther
Mm-hmm.
than 500K. I
Mm-hmm.
guess that'd be like probably 560, 570K. Um, yeah, and then I'm not sure on the the new one. Yep, it's 370 miles in August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, man, that's that's unbelievable, but it's fascinating. It's awesome. I love that. What draws you to this sport, John? It's a brutal sport. It's an amazing sport, a beautiful sport, uh, time demanding sport. Like, this isn't for the vast majority of people, but I'm curious, like, what draws you to doing these races and training?
So I mean, I originally came to them for essentially the exploration and the adventure to get out and be able to see these places and
Mm-hmm.
move quickly and pack as much in limited time as I could. But I've long since discovered that there's a lot that these experiences can teach me, a lot that I learned from them that carry back over into normal life, into my career, into my family life, and so that's a pretty big been a pretty big return on investment in terms of the time I've put into it and what I've gotten back out of it.
So can you give me a few examples of that? Like, what are you getting out of it?
I mean, things that I learn about myself, things that I learn how to confront these types of challenges in general. I've started posting a number of these on my social media channels
Hmm.
following the
Yep.
race. I've
Yep.
done 3 of them so far, and so we'll continue to do that because it is something that I've always kind of in my race reports and whatnot. I've kind of vaguely referenced these abstract lessons and things that I've learned and ways that I've grown and improved from these races. And so I'm now trying to work through doing that with a bit more detail and with actual well-defined things I've learned and examples of that.
You've posted these on Instagram, right, John? These
Yeah.
write-ups? Yeah,
Yep.
I've read a bunch of them. I didn't know they were like specific debriefs, but yeah, dude, they're very well written, very cool, very insightful. I'd recommend people listening to find you on Instagram. Is it Random Forest Runner?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
awesome name. Yeah,
So
easy to
yeah,
remember too.
I've
Um,
I've got a blog, randomforestrunner.com,
mhm,
and there's a sidebar on that that links to all my social media. So
mhm.
everything's cross-posted across those, so people can choose their medium of choice.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had some really awesome people on this podcast, like Alyssa Godsky. She did the Barclays this year. Are you familiar with Alyssa?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was on, and then yeah, we just had some other really great people, and they share their like training volume, like for the year, like say let's say 2022. With you, do you track that, and then like how many miles did you run in elevation accumulated in 2022? Do you have those numbers?
It's all on Strava. I don't really pay attention
Okay.
to it myself, but I do. Strava calculates that for me. It's not something where I set a goal of doing X number of hours or X number of miles or vert or anything like that. I'm
Okay.
guessing I probably do around 500,000 feet of vert in most years.
Yeah. Wow. 500,000. Yeah. So, all right, last few questions here. What goals do you have over the next few years, John? Just in life, racing, training, anything?
Yeah, I mean, definitely some races I want to get back out there and give my best effort and performance on, and uh, keep pushing forward with my career and be there for my kids and appreciate this time with them throughout all of that.
Yeah. Are you going to be racing the Barclays again?
I imagine so.
It's awesome.
It's good fun at this point, and yeah, just something I enjoy doing.
Is what advice do you have for people looking to jump into adventure racing and say possibly like the ultra marathon world? Let's say they're a 5K runner now and they would sort of want to bump this up over the next 2 to 3, 4 years. What advice do you have for them?
Just keep progressively pushing those limits and don't be afraid of failing on the way.
Okay, yeah, that's great. If there's anyone out there considering trying or attempting the Barkley Fall Classic there, the 50K, any advice for them in prepping for that?
Again, I haven't done that race myself, but just prep for the vert and for the 50K and mentally prepare yourself for um, the challenges you're going to face.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for this conversation, buddy. As I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you. And I wish you the best of luck in your future racing. We'll get this out to a bunch of people. Hopefully it inspires them to live an adventurous life. You certainly are. If listeners want to connect with you, follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Through that blog address and any of the social media linked from there. So randomforestrunner.com.
Okay, awesome. And we'll post those links in the show description, and we'll repost this when this goes live, so people can reach out if they want and follow you. So, John, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.